Imagine waking up to find yourself locked out of your own life. I'm not talking about a feeling, this was real. A wrought-iron gate, a bossy sign, a camera blinking red. All of it appeared overnight, right in the middle of my property. My lake, my peace, my slice of paradise, now blocked off, claimed by a bunch of strangers with clipboards and ridiculous rules. But instead of raging, I got strategic, and in the end, I bought the key they swore they controlled. Welcome to my world, or more accurately, what was left of it after the Pinewood Heights Homeowners Association decided my little paradise had an expiration date. My name's Jack Tanner. I'm a retired engineer, an amateur fisherman in my free time, and apparently the new villain of a neighborhood committee that seems allergic to peace and quiet. Seriously, these people have more time on their hands than I have fishing hooks in my tackle box. And trust me, I've got at least 200. Today, I'll tell you how I, a guy who'd rather hear a real spin than any shouting match, flipped the script, took control, and left these suited-up busybites eating my dust. The best part, I didn't even raise my voice. Want to know how? Grab a coffee or a beer if that's your style and follow me. Let's go. It all started on a perfect Saturday morning. You know the kind. The sun was barely up. The air still smelled like dew, and I was already out the door, ready for my sacred fishing ritual. Strong coffee in hand, mug still warm, rod slung over my shoulder like an extension of my arm. I could already hear the line slicing through the air and the plop of the hook hitting the water, until I saw it. A black iron gate, ugly as sin. No, ugly as sin and half drunk, to be honest, blocking my path to the lake like some fancy nightclub bouncer. Behind it, a security camera stared me down, its little red eye blinking, as if I were the trespasser in my own story. And crowning the insult, a sign bolted to the metal in bold letters, HO members only. HO? I wasn't part of any HOA. I'd bought this land 15 years ago, paid in cash, sweaty bills counted one by one, no bank breathing down my neck. It was my corner, my refuge, with no one to tell me whether I could string up a hammock or not. But there it was, planted in the ground like a verdict. Someone in some air-conditioned office with terrible machine coffee thought they could boss me around. My fish were on the other side of that gate, and me. I stood there, jaw on the ground, gripping a fishing rod that suddenly felt more like a baseball bat. The war had started, and I didn't even know I'd been drafted. I just stood there, trying to process what the hell was happening. My brain was still booting up, coffee in hand, rod dangling, that ridiculous gate staring me down like a playground bully. I looked right. The fence stretched toward old Tom's property, the grumpy guy who talks to squirrels like they're his grandkids. I looked left. It snaked back toward Pinewood Heights' manicured roads, that fancy subdivision that had sprouted like weeds in recent years, full of polished SUVs and lawns so perfect they looked airbrushed. I was still doing the mental math, wondering if I'd missed some cosmic memo when the answer arrived. And it arrived loud, clacking up my gravel driveway in heels that screamed, "I'm important," with every step. It was her. A woman in a pristine pantsuit, hair shellacked into unmoving perfection, and a smile so fake I swore it came with a factory warranty. She carried a clipboard like a shield and a lanyard that screamed "Ho board" in gold letters. My gut twisted. Not tie. Fear more like, "Oh boy, here we go." She stopped a few feet away, her smile widening as if I were a lost puppy she'd decided to adopt. Who'd put that gate there? The answer was right in front of me, and I already knew I'd hate it. Lisa Montgomery, president of the Pinewood Heights HOA, the woman who probably invented HOA meetings just to have a stage. She stood there on my gravel, in a purple blouse that screamed, "I'm in charge," and hair so stiff you could use it as a level. Her vibe? A mix of "I run this show and you should thank me for existing." She looked me up and down with the pitying stare you'd give a soggy stray dog, a blend of condescension and fake concern that made my blood boil. Before she even spoke, and speak she did in that rehearsed voice straight from a luxury soap commercial. "Hi Jack, we installed a security barrier for the lake. HOA members only, you know, liability, aesthetics and, well, maintaining Pinewood Heights standards." I blinked, once, twice, wondering if I'd hallucinated or if my coffee had been poisoned. "Lisa, I said slowly, like explaining to a dog why the couch isn't a toilet. I live here. This is my access to the lake. Mine. As in, since I showed up with a check and a dream of fishing in peace, while you were probably still picking. Between eggplant or grape for that blouse. She laughed, a sound like a cracked bell nobody bothered to fix, and shook her head as if I were a senile old man rambling. Technically, she drawled, stretching the word like verbal yoga, that strip belongs to the HOA now. We reclaimed it for the community, Jack. We sent notices. Didn't you see them? Notices. I nearly spilled my coffee imagining the steam rising as my patience burned. Notices? Lisa, the only things in my mailbox are 2-for-1 pizza coupons, which I ignore, and bills I pretend don't exist until the due date. Nobody sent me squat about you fencing off my lake like some gated prison. She tilted her head, her superglue smile unwavering, and sighed like I was a toddler missing the point. Jack, it's for your own good too, she said, as if I should kiss her heels in gratitude. Safety, property values, you'll love it once you adjust. Adjust? My eye twitched. I could feel the hook on my rod, begging to become a weapon. But I took a deep breath. Right then, with her heels grinding my gravel and the lake taunting me behind that gate, I knew this wasn't just a fence. It was a challenge. Lisa Montgomery and her clipboard army thought they could turn me into an extra on my own land. But I wasn't about to let some power-suited, high-heeled bureaucrat lecture me about standards while my fish were held hostage. The game was just beginning. I went after the truth. I'm not the kind of guy to sit around scratching my head while someone screws me over, so I put down my fishing rod, heart heavy, and went full detective mode. I tore my house apart like a madman looking for paperwork, grabbed my deed, those old maps I kept in a dusty box in the attic, even some yellowed aerial photos I'd taken with a pilot friend 10 years back. I sat at the kitchen table with a mug of coffee colder than my patience and started piecing the puzzle together. Then, bingo, I uncovered the scam, dirtier than swamp mud. That strip of land between my house and the lake, a measly 10 feet wide. A patch of dirt I walked across every day to cast my line, had been sold years ago to some Harold Grayson, an eccentric realtor who wore a cowboy hat and died choking on a steak in 2018. When old Harold kicked the bucket, Pinewood Heights, with its vulture instincts, snatched up the land in a silent auction, the kind nobody hears about until the gavel drops. No notice, no consultation, not even a, "Hey, Jack, mind if we steal your backyard?" Nothing. Overnight, that little strip became common property of the HOA, like some picnic park for rich SUV owners. I marched back to Lisa with my stack of papers, blood pounding in my temples, and dropped the bomb. How the hell did you buy this without telling me? She didn't even blink. With that toothpaste commercial smile, she looked at me like I was a tardy student and said, "Jack, you can appeal, of course, but since you're not an HOA member, you've got no voice in the committee. Rules are rules." Rules? Like asking permission to breathe my own air and then charging me for every gasp. There I was, clutching my deed like a shield, while she told me I could scream all I wanted, nobody would listen. That's when I realized it wasn't just about the land, it was a message. They thought they could swallow me whole, but I wasn't about to become HOA chow without a fight. I wasn't taking this lying down. I don't swallow toads, especially not one in a purple pantsuit and high heels. So, in a burst of defiance I hadn't felt since the 70s, I grabbed my needle-nose pliers, the ones that have bailed me, out of more fixes than I can count, and stormed toward the gate like an 80s action hero. In my head I saw it all, the metal snapping with a satisfying crack, the slow-mo shot of the camera dropping, me crossing to the lake with my fishing, rod raised like a trophy. First chain link clang, and the second was nearly gone when I heard the unmistakable clack-clack of Lisa's heels on gravel, echoing like a war siren. She appeared out of nowhere, like a soap opera villain, with a hulking security guard behind. Her, a guy who looked straight out of a gym ad, face like he hadn't smiled since 1995. "Stop, Jack!" she yelled, voice slicing the air like a siren. Before I could respond, she was already on the phone calling the cops like I was an international fugitive. 10 minutes later, Sheriff Carl Dawson showed up, hat crumpled, looking like he'd rather be sipping coffee at the diner. He scratched. His head eyed my yellowed maps, then the gate, then Lisa's pristine paperwork, which she handed over with a triumphant smile. "Sorry, Jack," he drawled, in a tone that made me want to punch the air. "Gates on their land, all legal-like. I was screwed." The pliers hit the dirt with a thud, and I stood there staring at Carl like he'd betrayed me personally. Losing lake access was bad enough, but the final blow. a $1,000 fine for trespassing like I was a thief stealing my own backyard. The guard installed a blinking surveillance camera right then, watching me 24/7 like I'd morph into Rambo, and Lisa. She dangled the only gate key in my face, metal jingling like a taunt. "Appeal to the committee if you want," she said, smirking like she'd won the round. I was trapped on my own land, holding useless pliers and a rage too big for my chest. But this wasn't over, not while I still had breath to flip the game. For days, I stewed. A hot, chest-tightening anger that made me want to punch walls, or, in my case, that stupid black gate. I considered everything, hiring a lawyer who'd bankrupt me before opening his mouth, blowing the gate sky-high like a cartoon. I even Googled where to buy dynamite, but gave up when cake recipes popped up. Instead, I half-planned to paddle to the lake in an inflatable boat, just to spite Lisa, imagining her face as I waved my fishing rod from the water. But between bitter coffees, glaring at that iron monstrosity, something shifted. A glint caught my eye, a crooked for sale sign on a tiny plot beside the gate, forgotten by the world. I didn't hesitate. Dialed the number like my life depended on it, and a perky realtor named Mandy answered, her voice teetering on desperate. "It's a narrow lot," she apologized, "inherited by some old lady in Colorado who doesn't even know she owns it. Just weeds and some old posts." Posts. My heart jumped. "Hold on, Mandy," I cut in, trying not to sound unhinged. "These posts, do they include the HOA gates?" A pause, then a rushed, "Yeah, think so." Like she'd just found her car keys. Perfect. A forgotten sliver of land thinner than a politician's ego, but with the gates posts thrown in. I made an offer on the spot, lowballed, because I'm retired, not Rockefeller, but enough to make Mandy yelp sold. So fast I almost heard her relief through the phone. Hanging up, I felt the tide turning. Lisa had the key, but me? I might just own the damn posts holding her gate up. My coffee went cold, but for the first time in days I was burning, with hope and a plan bubbling in my skull. 2 weeks later, I owned that forgotten scrap of land. The process was so fast I almost felt guilty, almost. Cost me less than my used car, that old '98 Ford that rumbles like a bear with bronchitis, but still gets me to the lake. I signed the papers on a rainy afternoon, Mandy handing me the deed like a winning lottery ticket, her eyes gleaming with relief, to finally dump that useless lot. But useless to whom? Lisa Montgomery and her HOA cronies thought they had it all under control. The lake, the gate, even the air I breathed, if they could charge for it. Little did they know their precious common property didn't include the posts holding up that eyesore of a black gate. And guess who owned the posts now? Me, Jack Tanner, the retiree with pliers in his drawer and a grin spreading across his face. I held the key to the game, not a literal one like Lisa's infuriating jingle of metal, but something better, quiet power, the kind you pocket until the right moment. I spent days plotting, sipping coffee on the porch while staring at that gate, imagining her face when I played my hand. No fireworks, no screaming matches. I'm not one for theatrics, leave that to cheap action flicks. No, I'd wait for the perfect moment, when she least expected it, to flip the table without even standing up. Lisa thought I was just a stubborn old man with a fishing rod, but I was about to show her that sometimes the fish hooks the fisherman, and I had the perfect bait. Pinewood Heights' annual summer brunch was coming up, the HOA's crown jewel, where they'd pretend to own the world while sipping mimosas from acrylic glasses. I watched the preparations from my window like a general surveying enemy camps. They'd picked the worst possible spot to taunt me. My old dock, the one I'd built plank by plank, sun scorching my neck, now rebranded as their exclusive property. They set up folding chairs so white they looked stolen from a luxury catalogue, a striped tent screaming, "Look how posh we are," and, get this, a chocolate fountain bubbling like a trophy of excess. I nearly laughed out loud picturing Lisa, dipping strawberries in it, smug as royalty, thinking she'd erased me from the equation. But I let them settle in. Let them sprawl in those chairs, clink their obnoxious glasses and play Lords of the Lake, as if I were some distant memory they could sweep under the rug. Meanwhile, I drank my coffee on the porch, counting minutes, that tiny lot and its precious posts burning in my pocket like an ace up my sleeve. Then the morning of the event, sun barely up, dew still glittering on the grass. I made my move. No noise, no pliers, no shouting. Just the precision of an engineer solving problems others couldn't even see. My plan was ready. And Lisa's. Brunch was about to become a picnic she'd never forget. I had the posts. I had the moment. And now? Now I'd show them the lake doesn't belong to whoever holds the key, but to whoever knows how to play the game. I changed the lock. Simple as that, but with style. No cheap break-in theatrics or telenovela drama. Went there at dawn, sky. Still purple with sleep, carrying a shiny new padlock, one of those military-grade models built to guard state secrets. The cold metal clicked into place like music to my ears, every turn of the key a silent "take that" to Lisa and her crew. For the finishing touch, I nailed up a hand-painted sign on scrap wood from my yard. Private property, Jack Tanner. No frills, no small print, just the message, hammered home like a line in the sand. When the HOA members arrived for brunch, it was like watching a circus assemble in reverse. They came in a herd, lugging picnic baskets and designer sunglasses, laughing too loud, as if the world revolved around them. Lisa led the pack, chin high in that signature purple blouse of hers, the gate key dangling from her hand like a royal scepter. She marched straight to the padlock, confident, jammed the key in, and nothing. She twisted it once, twice, 3 times, her face shifting from spray-tan bronze to ripe tomato red, the kind you see splitting in the sun. She smacked the gate, rattled the metal like it had personally wronged her, and I swear I caught a hissed mother as the others crowded behind her, clutching plates of suddenly less appetizing croissants. That's when she saw me. I was on. The porch, coffee mug in hand, deed folded in my shirt pocket, enjoying the show like a free matinee. I waved, slow, lazy, the kind that says "told you so" without words. "Not yours anymore, Lisa," I called, loud enough to cut through the morning air and lodge in her ear. Her face, priceless, mouth gaping like a fish on a dock, eyes bulging. For a second I thought she might actually explode, or at least hurl that chocolate fountain at me. The other members started whispering, pointing at the lock, the sign, then me. I just sipped my coffee, the taste of victory sweeter than any mimosa they'd not be drinking that day. The lake was mine again. And Lisa Montgomery's meltdown was the cherry on top. Lisa didn't give up easy. Never did. That woman had the stubbornness of a mule and the pride of a peacock. She stood there, red as a chili pepper, jabbing at the padlock like she could psychic it open. "Just a technical glitch," she barked at the HOA members, who now looked more lost than roaches at a square dance. "We'll fix this in no time." "Fix what, Lisa?" I had the deed in my pocket, the land in my name, and the gate, oh, that glorious gate, was mine, posts and all. Legally, they couldn't so much as breathe on it without my say-so, and I wasn't nodding at any of their nonsense. Checkmate, and she knew it, even if her ego refused to kneel. The party imploded, literally, and I couldn't have scripted a better ending. The HOA crowd shuffled like headless chickens. One polo-shirted guy tried climbing the gate, but quit when the rails ripped his khakis. I heard the fabric shred from my porch. A woman in a sun hat worth more than my 90s rent screeched about property rights while shaking a phone with no signal. Then came the grand finale. Some klutz holding a fruit tray shoulder-checked the lock, like that at work, and sent the chocolate fountain crashing. It hit the ground with a wet splat, spraying brown goo everywhere, ruining their white chairs and overpriced loafers. Pure chaos. A symphony of shrieks and muffled curses, chocolate flying like a slapstick gag. Me? I watched from the porch, rocking, my creaky wicker chair squeakier than my knees, with homemade lemonade in hand, lemons from my tree, 'cause even that was beyond their reach. The sun glinted off the lake, the air smelled like triumph, and I took a long sip, savoring the tartness as Lisa drowned in her own disaster. She shot me a glare that could melt steel, but I just raised my glass in a silent toast. To really drive the point home, I didn't stop at the padlock. I went full fortress, mounted a fake security cam and a floodlight on my sliver of land right in the gate's face. Not to spy, unlike certain HOAs, just to say I'm watching. The cam was a cheapo with a blinking red LED. The floodlight, an old barn fine brighter than a trucker's high beams, perfect for lighting up midnight trespassers. Installed it all in an afternoon, grinning like a man who'd already won, then tested the effect from the porch. Beautiful. The locked gate, the private property sign gleaming under the spotlight, me feeling like the sheriff of my own damn land. Lisa, of course, fought back. She always does. Days later, my mailbox overflowed with Pinewood Heights. HOA letters, typed in that pompous legalese that reads like medieval bylaws, accused me of community sabotage over a padlock. Even threatened legal action citing rules I'm sure she invented. Article 47B, Section 12, no disrupting aesthetic harmony with acts of solo rebellion. I laughed out loud, picturing her hammering those letters on a typewriter, hairsprayed, curls trembling with rage, pure desperation. My reply? Short and sharp. I folded a copy of my deed, now including the posts and land, tossed it in an envelope with a handwritten note. Good luck, Lisa. Need a lawyer? I'll lend you my pliers. Mailed it proper, just so she could savor the sarcasm with her office's weak coffee. The cam blinked, the floodlight glared, and me. I kept fishing my lake, knowing she could squirm all she wanted. Legally, she had no leg to stand on. Game over, and I owned the board. So, just when I thought the circus was over, Emily Carter showed up, the HOA secretary. She wasn't like Lisa, no loud purple blouse or high heels screaming, "I'm important." Emily was more down to earth, wearing worn-out jeans and holding a notebook, the kind of person who looks like they're carrying a weight they never asked for. She wasn't angry, which already surprised me. She was intrigued, like I was a puzzle she was trying to solve. She knocked on my door one quiet afternoon, the sun low in the sky, and with a half-smile said, "Jack, can I see the property line? Just trying to make sense of this mess." I raised an eyebrow, but I liked her tone. It wasn't war, it was pure curiosity. We walked together through the land, the wind brushing the dry grass. I showed her the deed, pointed out the posts, traced the line with my finger on the map while she followed with narrowed eyes, like a detective on a cold case. Suddenly she stopped, looked at the gate gleaming under my spotlight, and slowly shook her head like someone realizing they'd been fooled for years. "Lisa never properly approved this," she said almost to herself. She joined the committee, with that attitude of hers, claiming it all belonged to the HOA, that the land was secured. No one double-checked, not me, not the treasurer, no one. She let out a dry laugh, the kind that comes when you realize your boss is more of a clown than you ever imagined. You know how much she spent on that gate? $4,000, Jack. $4,000 on a piece of metal that isn't even hers. I crossed my arms, feeling that sweet taste of victory rising again, and let a smile slip. "Well, Emily," I said, pointing to the shiny lock and the private property sign that was quickly becoming my trademark, "it's mine now. She can send more letters, but the gate won't answer." Emily laughed again, louder this time, throwing her head back like she'd just dropped a burden. "You're clever, Jack. Lisa's going to flip when I bring this up at the next meeting." I shrugged, but inside I was laughing too. $4,000 down the drain, a gate turned. Trophy and Lisa? Well, she'd have to swallow that one with her weak coffee, while I kept fishing in peace as she tried to explain herself to the committee. But Lisa? Oh, she didn't give up that easy. When she realized she couldn't beat me by yelling, she switched tactics. She went aquatic. Suddenly, my quiet stretch of lake turned into a tourist hotspot. Little boats started showing up, paddle boats, even colorful kayaks, one after the other, docking right on my land like it was some public park. Guy, all cheerful, stepped off a paddle boat and told me, "Lisa sent out a newsletter, said this is now a community zone." I pointed at the big sign that said, private property, no trespassing, and asked, "Did she mention that I'm the owner?" The guy looked at me wide-eyed and ran off like he'd seen a bear, but it didn't stop there. A few days later, bright orange buoys appeared floating on the water, like someone had marked off a HOA swimming area. The kind of thing that looks official, but isn't. That was the last straw. I called the county directly, explained everything, showed them the proof. A week later, poof, the buoys were gone. No official permission, no chance. That's when I decided, no more just reacting. I was tired of always playing defense, putting out fire after fire. It was time to flip the script. Go on the offensive. I picked up the phone and called my old friend Brian. He works in the municipal planning department and knows every comma in our local regulations. If anyone could help me protect my land for good, it was him. I told him everything. He listened carefully, chuckled, and said, "Jack, I think I've got an idea that'll drive your neighbor crazy." And then came the plan. We found out that, thanks to a very specific loophole in the county's environmental guidelines, my land, that narrow stretch by the lake, could be reclassified as a protected ecological habitat. That meant it couldn't be used for anything impactful. No construction, no events, no paddle boats, kayaks, barbecues, or HOA parties, just conservation, silence, and peace. Exactly what I wanted. In less than 2 days, we filed all the paperwork, filled out the forms, gathered the documents, put together a full dossier, and 2 weeks later I got the official notice. My lot was now a restricted environmental zone. You know that gate Lisa hated so much? The one she said was an aesthetic monstrosity. Now it had status. It wasn't just a gate anymore. It became an environmental landmark, part of habitat protection, a symbol of preservation. And Lisa? Well, Lisa was left with nothing to stand on, literally. Everything she had planned to do on that strip of land was now illegal, and if she dared to step foot there, she would be the one committing an environmental violation. Nothing like good old bureaucracy playing on my team. And then it all came crashing down. The HOA, once all-powerful, collapsed from the inside, a true implosion. It all started when Emily, up to then just another quiet resident with a sharp eye, decided it was time to put an end to Lisa's reign. She gathered signatures, called an emergency meeting, and launched a full audit of the association's finances. And what they found, my friend, was jaw-dropping. Turns out Lisa had burned through $90,000 from the HOA fund. That's right, neighbors' money, community money. A good chunk went to install overpriced fences no one asked for, and the rest to dubious aesthetic improvements that only she found beautiful. But the cherry on top of the scandal? A luxury spa retreat where Madam President went to relax and meditate on the neighborhood's priorities. All funded by HOA money. When confronted, Lisa didn't have much to say. She did what these authoritarian types always do when their house of cards collapses. She resigned, left the stage playing the victim, claiming she was stepping down due to the toxicity of the neighborhood. Oh, sure, we were the toxic ones, but karma wasn't done yet. The county, after reviewing records and inspections, found multiple zoning violations, unauthorized construction, misuse of residential areas. The result? A $12,000 fine knocking on her door, and me, well, I just went back to doing what I've always loved, sitting by the lake, fishing rod in hand, the sound of calm water, and not a single orange buoy in sight. Peace returned, and this time, to stay. In the end, I decided to remove the padlock, not because I was forced, not because of pressure, but because I wanted to. I went up to the old gate, now officially an environmental landmark, and hung a new sign. Simple, direct, no threats. Respect earns access. And that's when everything changed. Today, instead of arguments, you hear laughter from kids with makeshift fishing rods competing to see who catches the first fish. Couples stroll along the lakeside at sunset, and neighbors, who once walked by with their heads down, now stop to chat. The gate stayed, but not as a barrier. Now it's a symbol. A silent reminder of the story that almost turned this place into a battleground. And Lisa? Well, Lisa disappeared from the neighborhood, but popped up on social media. She created a new profile filled with videos where she rants about systemic injustice, defamation campaigns, and property stolen by the state. The problem? No one really took her seriously. She went viral for a different reason. She became a meme edits of her holding orange boys, lip-synced videos, remixes with electronic music. And me? I became something of a local legend. The man who beat the HOA, the gatekeeper. The fisherman who defeated tyranny with a sign and a good cup of coffee. And the lake. The lake is still mine, quiet, free, just the way it was always meant to be. I learned something from all this. Sometimes the best revenge isn't yelling or fighting or ripping the gate off its hinges. It's owning it. It's showing. You don't have to lose your head to win, that's what I did. With patience, strategy, and a good sense of humor. And now I fish in peace. The sun glistens on the water. Silence is my ally. And the gate stayed. Not as a symbol of division, but as a reminder that, in the end, he who laughs last laughs by the lake. Game over.